was full screen there.
Yeah.
I am.
Yeah.
How do I not be?
I don't, yeah. I think it's just the way Michael's view is set up.
Okay, is there a way I can?
Yeah, go up top right-hand corner where it says view and go
Okay.
to gallery view.
Oh, okay. Hey, the Brady Bunch.
There we go.
There.
All
Okay,
right.
great. And I think it's recording. Yep, perfect.
Go ahead.
It's just my personal preference, Cody and Michael, if you care to, I'd rather see you than your name.
Maybe they're not in the room.
Yeah.
Oh, hello.
Hi.
Cody, do you know everybody?
No.
No?
I don't know most people here. Yes.
So Cody, we've talked, but we've never met directly, I think.
Yes.
I'm Linda
Yep.
Koslowski. Yes.
Yes. Good to officially meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Thank you.
Hey, Michael, you're out on your front porch. Nice.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Ogburn. I don't know if I've met either one of you. If I have, I apologize, but if not, hello. No.
Cody, would you explain who you are, why you're here?
I wasn't gonna ask him that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's not just a random visitor.
Yeah.
No, not a rando. I'm a Hatfield fellow, so I'm technically employed by Portland State University, but through an intergovernmental agreement, I'm placed with the city of Manzanita. So I've been working with Layla and quite a few others for the last 6-ish weeks. And Layla asked that I be a part of this meeting because I'll be helping Scott and Chris with some STR related things. And
Excellent.
yeah, got to be good for context.
Great.
Okay.
Great. Well, if you have any questions, let me know. Let us know.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And
Well, actually, just as a side to that, we may want to fill Cody in on some of the issues that we're having. He might be a good communicator of that to staff, just as a heads up.
Okay. Well, maybe we can get together.
Yeah, that'd be great.
you want to go around this one?
Sure. So we're doing introductions. Is that what?
Yeah.
Okay, for Cody and sure. So hey, Cody, Michael Duncan. On the short-term rental advisory committee here. I fill the role of kind of owner operator. So I've got a short-term rental here in town. I manage it myself, and then I also live here full time with my family. So I think that's probably the
Who you
gist of
are.
it. Yeah, that's who I am.
My name's Leslie Bagan, and we've had a house here for 12 years and recently retired here, well, recently a year and a half ago. And I just joined this committee. And I don't own a short-term rental. I'm surrounded by short-term rentals, but I don't own them.
And my name is Cheryl Ogburn, and my husband and I bought a house here 36 years ago. And so this has been our place to go to for 36 years. And we are both retired now, and we spend a lot more time down here and like it that way. And we do not rent our house and never have.
And you are chair of the committee.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Oh
yeah.
Tell anybody that.
And Joe Newhouse, I was the chair until I
Oh no.
was gonna say dumped it on.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I'm not, she is. I live in Pine Ridge, but I have a house on 3rd Street that I used as a short-term rental for 20-something years and now use as a long-term rental.
And Julie?
Yeah, me, Julie Johnson, and I'm new to the short-term rental committee, and I own a house in Manzanita. It's a second home. We don't rent it. I guess my position is at large, although I too live on a street with many, many, many short-term rentals, so I represent both, I suppose. And I'm recently retired as of January this year, so enjoying retirement.
And Mike, I don't know who you know, but you want to just, why do you come to these meetings? I'm not judging.
My wife and our family has owned a home here in Manzanita for over 30 years as a second home, a vacation home. Recently, we built a new home as a retirement home. And then the home we've owned for a long time, we've have licensed as a short-term rental. So we spend a little over half of our time here in Manzanita and split time between here and Arizona.
And Mike's not on the committee, but has been coming to the meetings pretty regularly since it was a work group, not a committee.
Right, since the COVID period when Zoom became available to people.
All right, I think we're ready to go. I guess I should do this, huh? We wanted to start with next steps, and I think that takes us to there were 3 issues that we were raised when we presented to the council in June, whenever that was,
Yeah.
May, June. And they're kind of lay out some chunks of work, and I asked Michael to kind of walk us through the one question that was raised, which was, if you remember in June, we talked about the occupancy element of the plan. And there was a question about the impact that the proximity radius, or halo, even though it's not a halo, would have on homes with 12 or more occupants. Is that right? Chime in, because it's been a while for me, so.
Well, I think it was,
Yeah,
14.
we're not using that term.
it was
even though I-
5 or more bedrooms.
5 or more bedrooms, which would take us at 12 or more occupants. So, and then we do have those large,
14.
or 14,
14.
given the current
Right.
guidelines. All right,
So, I mean, do you want to dive into that now, or talk like big, like next steps as far as like, you know, our October meeting and what we're teeing up to try to resolve these issues or these outstanding questions?
May I make,
Yeah.
Joe, may I make a suggestion? It's been a while for all of
Yeah.
us, and I don't know what Cody knows. Cody, have you seen the report that we presented to the city council?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay, so we need to get Cody that report. And if you could just kind of, I know if you could just kind of summarize where we started, where we are right now, and what the maybe 2 or 3 big issues, maybe you and Joe and Michael could jump in and kind of, so that we're all on the same page, because it's like it's been 10 years.
Exactly, that's why I keep looking to Michael to say, what is June? Okay. I'm
Yeah.
gonna let you summarize, because I
Okay,
think you want.
so we, yeah, the days are, what month was it? February?
Years.
Maybe?
Mhm.
We made a report to council based on, about 2
And
years.
why did we make the report to council?
Well, it was based on 2 years of work, based on the fact that we, prior to that, had put a whole bunch of new ordinances in place. And we'd done a survey trying to determine how the city, as residents and as part-timers, felt about, we use the word livability, in terms of short-term rentals. And then we were faced with, we need to come up with a way to regulate growth, because 3 years ago, we put the city put a freeze on the number of short-term rentals. And that number was frozen at 230 homes in the residential areas. And then there was no freeze in the commercial and the R4 zone area. And so that freeze is ending in April. So the question is, do you continue the freeze? Do you go back to what we used to do, which was 17.5% of the homes? Do we do something else? What do we do about what the survey said was people's issues with too many houses clustered in one spot? Is there anything Phil, who you haven't met, Phil is now in the screen. Phil is on the Planning Commission. And one of the important things Phil did for us was to say, if you're going to talk about density, which is what we called it in the survey, what do you mean? Is it different numbers of houses? If it is it deal with occupancy? Does it deal with proximity? Does it deal with lots of different things? So we decided we were just going to focus on proximity, meaning how many houses are near each other that are short-term rentals. And so we spent about 1.5 years and we came up with 3 concepts for growth control, which I'll go over in a minute. We tied that to a proximity measurement, which is what Cheryl has referred to as the halo. In other words, can we put a limit on how many houses can be in one 100-yard radius? How many short-term rentals can be in 100-yard radius? And that's what we're calling proximity. And then at that time, and at that first presentation, we didn't deal with occupancy at all. The city said, can you do something about occupancy? So then we came back and we came up with some occupancy ideas, and that's what was presented in June. So that's a broad overview. In terms of growth control, we gave the city 3 what we felt were workable options. And one of the reasons we gave them 3 is that even as a committee, we couldn't exactly agree on the best plan. And they wanted options so that they could determine it, because we as a committee are not, we don't set the policy. We recommend, we make suggestions to council, council sets the policy. So the 3 growth options that we looked at were, 1, having a set cap. So the number right now is 276. Linda, by the way, the website is updated. I don't know if that had to do with you, Cody, or what, but it's now says 276. Yay. It still says last updated March 2023, but it is updated. Anyway, so we have 276. So should we just make a cap and of 276 or 280 or 275 or whatever, and just say, that's it. And until council comes back and says, we want to change that cap, it would be a citywide cap of that number. So there would no longer be a commercial cap and a commercial no cap and a residential cap. It would just be citywide cap.
I want to interject though, because one thing is, in that work of looking at growth management, we made the decision to approach it citywide, to not target certain neighborhoods or areas or zones. And so we looked at our current zoning and we decided to make these recommendations based on citywide, so that we all benefit from the STR revenue and what brings, and so we all have a responsibility to it as well. So
the second option was to stay with the 17.5% that had been used previously before the freeze was put in place. And that 17.5% started in 1995. So it had been in place a long time. So that's a second option. Linda, were you adding something or talking to somebody else? We can't hear you.
can't hear you.
You're muted, Linda.
You're muted.
Well, it doesn't help when. So I suggested to Cody that that's kind of an overview, and that to write down questions that we'll answer at the end of the meeting if you have questions, because it's really complicated. I mean, You know, that's kind of a blush, but we've been working with this for 3 or 4 years and it's tough. And if you have a question during the conversation, please ask. And I think we're in a pretty good place right now
No,
to,
because we've left out the
Side.
third option, which is, I'm just gonna say my favorite.
okay,
Okay, the third option was to put a number in place now. Based on the current number, let's say 276. So basically the same as having a cap, but add that there would be 2 homes added to that number every year. So if now it's 276 in 2025, it would be 278 in 2026, it would be 280. And that was based on the information that we averaged over the last 10 years, about 2.4 new STRs a year. And so what that does is allow growth similar to what we had before, but takes the growth down a little bit lower than it was, and also solves the problem about the new, I never remember the name of the law, the workforce housing that will allow more duplexes, triplexes, quads, apartments. Because a dwelling unit, you know, the new the new thing that may come to fruition up on the Pine Grove properties. The workforce housing is 170 units. So that would put 25 more short-term rentals if you use the 17.5%. So
Which are not eligible to be short-term.
yeah, and so they would be in other parts of town. So again, the 3 growth options, just real quickly, would be just to freeze a number that the council would have to go back and look at fairly regularly. The 17.5% or the cap number with a two short-term rental license growth every year. So those are the growth options, and then proximity we talked about. So there you go.
So the way that, I mean, I think it is complicated, but I also think we tried to simplify it by saying we're going to start with the growth management, which is the big thing, the number of the percentage. Then we're going to look at radius or proximity, or density, density within there. So how many houses, short-term rental houses, can be in this 100-foot radius? And then where we are now is looking at occupancy, because as Joe said, that was something that the council asked us to do when we presented in June. So.
Well, and yeah, and I think maybe along with that, just we got a working dog. So along with that, maybe the big picture simplification, and maybe this will lead into. Do you just want to jump into the
Well,
occupancy, or
what I thought would jump into that, and you can correct me as wrong, is this is something that Michael and I talked about working on, because as we go forward, we have these issues that we need to get some work done around, so we thought we'd have some subgroups do them. So one of the responses was to look at the radius tool we have, because we need to explore the impact that our recommended change in occupancy would have for the short-term rental owners and for the city in terms of revenue, and if there would be. But I'm just going to backtrack a little bit to give you some. When we made the maximum occupancy recommendations, we went through this tool, and we looked at our current STR policy is 2 per bedroom plus 4. And I really can't give you any background about why that is. We looked at neighboring communities and found that we were kind of an outlier with that. And there's been lots of changes. We were allowing more. So our recommendation was 2 per bedroom plus 2 with a maximum of 14 on any given home. And that puts us more in line with communities up and down the coast, as well as throughout Oregon. It also, when we looked at the data from rental agencies and what people were advertising their short-term rentals for, even though technically by a license, they maybe could have that +4. The majority of people were renting with the +2 or just 2 per bedroom.
The majority, like 80%.
Like 80% of the homes are not utilizing that +4 number. So what we wanted to do now was do a little deeper dive as in the months ahead to see what the impact would be. The other thing that came up was the idea of within this radius, it's a 100-foot radius, and we had suggested there be no more than 5 short-term rentals within this radius. So each house would be a point, so to speak, and is if we looked at the homes 12 and above, this is where my memory, 12 and above,
5 bedrooms.
5 bedrooms. If a 5-bedroom home,
Living spaces,
hot 5
sleeping spaces.
living spaces, sleeping spaces,
Yeah.
that home would be weighted as 2 points within the radius. They would not pay more for a license, that nothing would impact that. It was brought up that in some of these radiuses, we have 2 or 3 homes that have 5 bedrooms. So within a very small area, you potentially have 30, 40 plus people. Not that they're there every night and maybe not there at all, but given that they could be there. So that was the other element of it. So now we're kind of at that granular occupancy rate.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I think that's a good, I look at
Look
the
here,
screen,
yeah.
I'm looking at the owl.
I know, I think
Which is just weird.
I know. And so, yeah, I think that's a good, so we're ready to kind of transition discussion into that. Okay, right. So big picture, we have, direction from council, we have a livability survey that's given us sentiment and some kind of, quick read on what community wants us to look at. And that kind of brought us to the policies that Joe and Shell described. And I think maybe a good way, and this is, so we have a couple, we have our main report that we presented back in June. And then we kind of have this addendum to that, which dives into the occupancy topic. And so then there's a visual in that report, and I'll get that to you, Cody. And for anybody else who's listening to this or will listen to the recording, is that it's, I think a great visual was that kind of funnel where you start out at the high level policy where you have growth management that's citywide, right? And that's policy that's affecting citywide. You have a density proximity policy, which is kind of at a neighborhood level or maybe street level. And then when you get into occupancy, it kind of relates to that street level, but it's really about impacts or potential areas of policy concern within the home or adjacent to. And so one of the things I don't want to overlook, because I think it's really important, is in some of our initial outreach, I think Cheryl, right when you spoke with the fire department, their recommendation was 2 per room +1 was kind of a best practice. And as we're moving forward with kind of our lit review or outreach with other communities, because I do think it's good to look at what other communities are doing. I think the important clarification there is to find out the why. Because if there's something that we're overlooking, or if they found something in statute or statewide guidance that says from a health and safety standpoint, we need to be at 2 per room plus X. And so two per room +4 was some guidance that we had received. We were also kind of looking at potential impacts from cars that are parking on site, and if you have X amount of folks staying there, I mean, if you want to get into the math, average car carries and I don't think that's a stretch. And so what we're trying to do is land on a number that is supportive of the community's livability goals, helps us maintain the character of the community, and can make STRs
Just another house.
well, yeah, and an important part of our community. And historically, aligns with the, you know, historic vacation tourism type elements in our community. So, so right, we have that funnel that takes us down to this. And so what the prompt was, we were thinking occupancy, and then the prompt was, would you consider the max number of occupants per that 100-foot catchment area versus the number of homes? And, you know, our knee jerk, just because we've been working on this for a year and a half, is like, woof, you know, let's try not to make it more complicated. But you know, the question was there, so really the encouragement was to look a little bit deeper in why, you know, what are the real issues tied with looking at a specific number of occupants, and using that max number per the 100-foot buffer versus the number of homes. And so I have some, let me see if I can bring them up, but maybe the statement will be, yeah, you could have 5 homes within a 100-foot buffer. And what that's really trying to get at is a mix of uses on that street, right? You have some people who live there long-term, year-round. You have some folks who might live there part-time. You have some second homes. But it's a healthy mix. It's a balance of residential uses within that on that street. When you start going to an occupancy-based calculation, there's potential for having more than the 5 homes within that 100-foot buffer. And so the mix shifts. And maybe, let's see if I can, what's this?
Do you have share
Share screen.
for Michael? Or for, yeah, it's for
Let's see
Michael.
if I can try to do it here. Raise hand, show captions, summary.
I think Linda has to do it.
No,
Oh.
no, share screen is the green one.
Oh, okay. Let me try
The
that
one
then.
lit up blinking.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Do we have do we know how many houses get built on a yearly basis here?
Yeah,
Yeah, we do.
And then this is
and it really varies.
historic trend is
That's-
up.
Yeah. But it's gonna level.
And we saw that bump, and then we saw it slow down with interest rates, and then who knows, you know, what'll happen with the Fed rate
And
cut.
here's a tie-in. It's 2.4 short-term rentals per year. So 2.4 is 17.5% of
The whole.
the
Right.
whole, yeah, right.
Do the
Like
algebra
a-
there.
yeah. It's somewhere between 20 and 30 homes.
I'm
Okay.
curious because you said there's a question about maybe 2 a year adding on to
Yeah,
the short.
2.4, yeah. Can everybody
Round
see that?
down, what's gonna happen.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yep.
So I wanted to, let's see, I think I got 3 slides here, and we have some other slides, thanks, Joe, that were examples of when we have like the large home, right? The
Right.
14 plus.
Yeah.
And what does that look like for this? And you know, this is one of those things where I think it's a good example of policy by, well, potential policy by attrition, right? You know, as they sell or what happens, the number of homes within this SDRs will go down, right?
As what are you looking at? The dots are short-term rental homes.
Right.
The little blue number, if you can see it, is the occupancy in each of those homes. And this particular area is an outlier. It really, I think that this particular area is actually in the L1 zone.
Oh, is it? Okay.
But it's not marked that way, and it's not marked on city maps that way. But if you look, see the pink thing up in the upper left is a hotel.
Right. I know.
You can't have an hotel in the R4 zone, therefore that hotel has got to be in the L1 zone, which is limited commercial.
Hmm.
So the pink things are hotels. In between are these dwellings, which I think are really in L1. So this
No, they're
particular,
going, they're going this way. I think some of them are, but some of them
yeah,
aren't.
this particular
combination of
screen,
zone.
I think is
Okay. Use a
more-
different example.
Yeah, it's a
Okay.
bad example, but
Right.
yeah,
Well, but
Well,
here it
there
is.
you go.
And but we went through several of them, but the one that I really wanted to show you as it relates to this policy document,
Mhm.
topic, which again is the policy options are: do you regulate the number of short-term rentals within a catchment area, 100-foot catchment area, based on number of STRs or based on the occupants? And so you have, this is Edmond and Carmel. I think that's yeah, Treasure Cove is the next block down. So if you were to license this, right, there's currently four STRs within that. So current number of STRs within 100-foot catchment area, 4. STR allowed, yes. So you could go up to 5. The current number of permitted STR, and so this is based on the 2 plus. Sorry if I'm.
That's no, that's okay. That's my street. That's what I'm looking for.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, great. And so the current number of permitted STR occupants, that's based on 2 per room plus 4. So that's the current policy that we have right now. And then the proposed number of permitted STR. So if that one was permitted, it would, based again, our
I
current
see.
policy would be 8, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
And so we have a total number of, so this achieves a mix of homes in the area, right? Because there's STRs, there's potential long-term, there's potential part-timers, whatever.
Before you switch that slide. We can't see the rest of you. So if you have a question, don't raise your hand, just yell.
Okay,
Michael?
Yeah.
Are you gonna address the number of occupancies per house there or the weighted? Are those all under 5 bedrooms, those homes?
Yeah, well, yeah, there'll be a slide that shows that.
Okay.
And so,
But when you said that, go back for a minute,
Oh.
I'm sorry. No.
yep.
The proposed number of permitted STR with occupancies,
That's based on the +4.
that's based on the +4.
Mhm.
Okay.
Because most of these are 2-bedroom homes. So,
Okay.
So the proposed is he's just adding that house with the 8 occupants.
Mhm.
yeah. And so it becomes, I guess the direction, the aha moment for me is, it becomes basing it on occupants, at least at 50. But I think it's still problematic, whatever the number is that if you have homes that are two bedrooms
Mhm.
or less, it becomes problematic because then you get more STRs, your mix changes,
Yeah,
right,
that's
on the
right.
street level, and that doesn't necessarily achieve. I would, put out there, I don't think that achieves the livability goal that
Yeah,
our
I don't
community
either.
has.
Because before you move this, I want to go to look at, we've been focusing on the houses that are STRs.
Mhm.
Look at the houses in the radius that are not STRs and think about that would mean you have 40 up to 42 people on your street. So I think I'm not advocating either way, but I think when we look at these slides, we need to say, oh, let's focus on the STRs, but now let's look at the homes that are not STRs, because as it's been pointed out by other community members, if we just look at home, sometimes we're not looking at the homeowner or the second homeowner who's next door, right across the street there, who you don't usually have 40 some people on your block with cars, and that's a change. So I think that we need to keep that in mind, that it impacts livability.
I saw a really interesting presentation this morning that was done by the Oceanside, asked for by the Oceanside people. And it said that in the second quarter, which is the summer,
Mhm.
the occupancy was about 60 to 65%. But what I couldn't tell was, did that mean, I don't believe that meant the occupancy in each house. It meant of the homes,
Utilization.
60% of
Yeah.
them were occupied.
Yep.
In that halo?
No,
Well,
in
just
in
Oceanside.
general. Okay.
In general,
Oh,
well, in
okay.
Tillamook County,
Right,
actually,
right,
Tillamook
right.
County.
But that's a number we have to dig into before we toss that around, because I think one thing, Tillamook County, first of all, goes far and wide. And I think we are uniquely positioned as a resort,
Yeah.
beach community.
Well, and we can probably get,
Max,
it'd be great if some of these third party, Airbnb, VRBO had a liaison for communities. And but they don't. So in lieu of that, maybe we could work with Danielle or
Yeah,
or
Danielle
one of
could
the
help us with
other
that.
local
Okay,
ones.
sorry to derail that.
No, that's right. Good. So this is the picture of kind of as is right now. So if you were to, let's see, what was the point I was trying to make here? Oh, I wanted to show what the other homes in that buffer, based on the current policy of two per room plus 4, would that change anything? And the answer is yeah, by potentially by 1, right?
So you could add another home
You
and
could-
stay under the 50 if we were
Right.
doing it by number.
Yeah, and so
Where 50 came up with.
well, it's in our report. It was kind of a threshold that people felt. And we had some conversation on it, but I guess to that point, we could change that number to 40 or something like that. But again, I mean, you're having to solve problems to solve, it starts to be
Get to-
yeah.
No, I'm
Um,
just wondering if we gave enough thought into that number of 50.
Well,
put
and
out
that's
there.
and that's an option. I mean, is that if somebody, if the direction, so we put out these policy options, and if council or staff advises, hey, we like occupancy, but we, it's certainly within their
Sure.
purview to reduce that. So 6. So one more than what
That's interesting.
we would have current policy. However, when we look at shifting this to 2 per room plus 2,
Mhm.
right? So all those 2-bedroom homes go from
Eight.
whatever 8 down to 6.
Mhm.
And so if you use a 50 occupancy max per
Right.
100-foot catchment area, then you could potentially have 8 homes.
I
there.
think that's
So-
where the 50 came from, that most homes are, the average number of people in a home is 10. And so we figured 5 homes, 10, 50.
Yeah.
And so if you change the average number of occupants to 8, then it would change to 40. I mean, but I think that's we need to know that.
Yeah. Well, no, and I think this helps illustrate that. I would say, they're almost 2 separate policy, issues that you're trying to address. Is one, are you trying to address the housing mix on your street of 5 STRs per X amount of homes?
Mhm.
Or are you trying to, when occupancy comes into play, are you trying to limit the number of people?
Well, I want to
and-
speak to that because I'm not sure combining those two is what we had set out for. Because when we went to the proximity with the 5 with the radius, we were talking about the street level.
Yeah.
We were going street by street to preserving the mixed use of homes on that street. The conversation around occupancy, in my mind, got more to the livability issues that the number of people create
each
on a
house.
street. So cars parked on street, dogs in streets, the comings and goings, the this and the that. So I am not thinking we ever approached this as combining those two. It
We
was
didn't.
the funnel that came
Yeah,
down. and
we
this was
didn't,
the funnel.
but when we were talking about proximity in, let's call it February. When we were talking about proximity in February, one of the counselors said, instead of doing it by number of houses, can we do it by number of people?
And I remember that conversation, and then we're gonna get into this when we talk about making things complicated, because then potentially that radius has 8 houses, the one next door that down the street has 4 houses.
Right.
Then that becomes a management issue for the city, in my opinion. It also becomes something that is very difficult for community members to understand, as well as real
Mhm.
estate agents and those folks, about how many short-term rentals can happen. And that takes me back to our livability survey, which said the citizens kind of wanted a short and a sweet and an easy to understand policy that was across the city. So it was true on Edmund Street, it was true on Windward, it was true on Laurel, it was true wherever.
What I see what Michael has done as doing was, it was a question that was asked and it was a fair question. What would happen if, instead of doing houses, we did people? And I think what you're saying, and I absolutely agree with, is what he's showing is it doesn't work and here's why it doesn't work. And I think that's an important,
Yeah, I'm not sensing that though. I want to make sure
Yeah.
we're communicating this doesn't work.
Well,
for
it
a
doesn't
number of
achieve the policy goal. I mean, I think is the way that you
Yeah.
have to frame it. So if your policy goal is to have a healthy mix of residential housing, this policy doesn't tackle that. If your policy goal was to have X amount of humans, like occupants that are staying overnight there, that's a different thing. And I don't know that this is the best method of accomplishing that. I think the occupancy on a permitted per house level is the policy that achieves what
Okay.
that's trying to get at.
Fine.
does anybody feel differently?
About,
No,
What we just.
Could this work? Would this be a good thing to do? To go to numbers instead of houses?
I think that the other point that I think I made last time about this, we talked about was that from an impact standpoint, we talked about the fact that maximum occupancy probably does not occur that often, probably mostly in the
Right.
big summer months like July and Labor Day. But so if you just go by maximum number of people, I don't think that the impact will be as great as to limiting the number of short-term rentals year round.
Mm,
Right.
good point. So
So Julie, do you have an opinion about what we just talked about either, or which would be a more advantageous way to look at this or manage this from a policy point of view?
Yeah, my opinion would be definitely number of homes,
Number of homes.
not number of occupants, yeah.
So I guess, did you have?
no, I'm
Okay.
still thinking.
Okay. Well, I guess if we're kind of, I mean, the only other thing that was rattling around in here was, of course, that calculation was based on number of permitted by city. I mean, it's a whole can of worms if anybody says, yeah, you permitted me for that, but I don't rent it out to that. Why are you limiting me? I'll only rent it out to 4 or something like that. You know, all these, and I don't think we would go there. I don't think the city would go there. I don't think we would recommend that. But I mean, that's just one more thing of like, you know, if the framework is regulating number of STRs based on the amount of people per given, you know, boundary, it just becomes problematic. One, with existing policy. Two, you know, it doesn't align with, you know, the policy direction that
Right.
we're necessarily recommending. And then 3, you start getting folks that are like, well, you know, I'll only have a 2, you know, it's set up for 4 people or something like that. And then, I mean, I guess the simple answer is you say, no, the calculation is based on the max permitted because we have to assume that that's reasonable and likely to occur.
Well, the other thing about this is the proximity radius on most of our blocks, there's 2, if not 3. Right? If you're going from one end to the other of a block. So there's.
You mean there's 2 or 3
circles?
circles. If you go from one end of the block to the other end of the block?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, I'm sorry, I wasn't very clear. So that. I mean, I think we need to think of this, because, oh, okay, so there's 50 people here or whatever. Then that means there's another 50 people and then perhaps another. And so I'm not sure it's meeting the goals of what the citizens told us about the livability. So I think you're right. I think this opens, and I don't know how you manage it, to be honest. It's not consistently managed.
I think this would be hard for the city, if nothing else. I don't think it worked for all the reasons we talked about, but I also, from an administrative
Yeah,
standpoint.
that's what I mean.
It's really,
And it wouldn't be very transparent, and I think it would be difficult for people to understand. And, you know, one of the things we heard is people, and the businesses are real estate. So if a person is buying a home down here with the intention of setting it up as an STR, it would be very clear to them from the funnel approach, from the growth numbers to the proximity to the occupancy. This is not very clear.
Yeah. Well, so I guess maybe not necessarily a decision point, but I mean, I'm not hearing anything that is anything new that's telling us, that we can that would let
But
me
I think
yeah.
this is something that is worth going through, and it's worth the council looking at, so they understand why we chose the other approach versus this approach.
Yeah, and I
But
guess
again,
as far as like
we're suggesting.
I don't want, I guess I'm at a point in the meeting where I'm like, I feel like we're kind of all on the same page with this. What I think would be helpful for me or whoever else is going to be editing the policy addendum, would be if maybe offline, maybe I'll send out that report again, so everybody has it quick and easy to reference. And then if there's any talking points, and you don't have to write it in like policy language or anything, but just say, this policy doesn't make sense because it's complicated or whatever. So I can make sure to capture that and kind of wordsmith it, retool it into maybe some additional policy bullets, policy consideration bullets under this topic. So help council better understand.
We can work on that.
The other thing that the council asked us to look at was the effect of counting the large homes as
Right.
two, which is the slides I sent you. And I
Yeah.
think you've got those up there.
I do. Is there?
Before we leave this, everybody listening, is it okay if we leave this topic?
So can I ask a question? So to limit the number of occupancy, we're saying that's too complicated? Is
No.
that-
No,
No,
We're
Administratively, it would be difficult.
no.
no, that's a
Uh,
good point.
If
No,
you're asking the question, part two. Thank you. I always say that. So they're two very different things. So there's a policy to regulate. We're making an adjustment to an existing policy regulating the number of occupants per STR. So
Right,
that
right.
stays. It's on the books now.
Okay.
Our recommendation is to tweak the number and calculate, how that is a bit. What this topic was, again, was a prompt from that prior council meeting, was how come you're using the number of STRs per catchment area and not the number of occupants? So this was an
Proximity.
exercise.
Got it.
proximity, the
Proximity.
proximity, not occupancy.
Okay,
So what we're saying is it is preferable to have a number 5 or 4, whatever we've suggested, 5
In the catchment area.
in the proximity, and then deal with the occupancy as a separate matter, because is this counting, and when we think of max, having to count the number of occupants in a house, which is something we didn't even discuss, we
Yeah,
can put on there.
yeah.
How do you go in and say there's only supposed to be 6
Yeah.
people here and I see 8? Well, they
Yeah.
visit. I mean, I just think it's kind of not enforceable.
But if we decided instead of +4, it's +2.
Well, that's the occupancy. What we're talking about now is this proximity. So the other proximity question that came up, so there was this one about occupancy versus
Number of
homes
in the catchment area. I
Yeah.
love that word, by the way.
in the catchment area. Much better phrase. Only took us a year to come up with that, but I like it. I'm gonna write it down. Is if you had a home with 5 or more bedrooms,
Right.
it would count as 2. And so
Right.
that's the next thing, right?
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and
Did I capture that?
yeah. Well, and I can go to those slides.
Yeah.
And Joe, was there one in particular on here that you wanted me to go to?
No, just
Okay.
not the
Not the
one,
one.
with the L in the L1 zone.
Okay. Well, I'll start at the beginning.
What I tried to do was find the homes that had 5 or more bedrooms, which would be an occupancy of 16.
Currently,
5,
current
2 times 5
ordinance
plus
would
4.
say. 16.
Yeah.
That is,
That would be
It's 2
14.
plus 4.
yeah,
Well, we have,
Well, I did
there's,
16.
there's
anyway, 16 or 14.
3 or more homes with 7 bedrooms, 3 homes.
Oh, I don't.
There's, I think
It's a
there's
handful.
one that's got an occupancy of 18, and then 3 that have an occupancy of 16. And then I think there were 3 or 4 14s.
I thought it was right around 7 homes throughout the area
yeah.
that would be impacted by.
So
the
I've got,
maximum.
I just did 4 of them because that's what I did.
Okay,
Yeah,
so let's
well-
take a look at it.
So I don't know why I picked this one out of the several that we have there, but So this is the example of, there's current number of short-term rentals within the 100-foot catchment area. There's 4. Would one more be allowed? Technically, yes. However, as on the books right now, yes. But if we were to describe lot 14, or I mean not lot 14, but the reddish orange one there in the center of the catchment area, they could be permitted for 14 because they have 5 sleeping areas, which is
So I
sleeping.
guess I did do 14. Yeah.
So and so 5 or greater would be considered a large home. And this would be a scenario where we don't necessarily want that 5th STR on there, because the thought is that a large home is impactful from parking, traffic, noise. These are all from our livability survey. These
Right.
were like the top 3 things: parking, noise, traffic.
Traffic.
And so and it's not to say that folks who have second homes out here or live here full time can't have barbecues with a bunch of people, but when we have an STR that's licensed at this and it's set to host big groups, those rent for the 100 days of summer, at least in Manzanita, I think they do.
So what this is showing is 1, 2, that 16 is an STR currently.
So there's 5 STRs
So there's 5 STRs in this circle
currently.
Or I
currently.
thought the red, oh, you picked one that was already, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's why we know it's 16, otherwise we wouldn't know. So this one shows as 5, and that would be
Now-
permitted under our
Okay.
current
I see,
plan.
okay.
But if that 16 was counted as 2, then by attrition, one of those would need to be dropped.
Right.
Eventually, at some point
yeah,
down the
through-
road.
yeah, yeah.
Nobody's gonna lose their license, nobody's gonna get kicked out. But I think, again, we see that there's 5 clustered there, but also look to the homes around them that are not STRs and think of, that's an impactful block there. I can't read the numbers of the other homes, how many people, but you said.
Because, oh, yeah.
I didn't necessarily,
No,
but this
no,
one's,
The
8.
short-term rentals.
so that's 8, 8, 10, 12, and 12.
So that's a lot.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Where
So
is
I
that?
have a question. So if the one with 14 was not a current short-term rental and
Right.
they applied, under our new recommendation, they would be denied. But if another home, a smaller home applied, they would be accepted?
Correct.
Correct. If you had a home that had under 5 bedroom, let's just say the big red home went away.
Or had 8 bedrooms.
Or had 8 bedrooms, if you're, no, if it still is 5, that area, what do we call it?
Catchment area.
Catchment area is maxed out currently. What the new ordinance would do would be to mark it as, there's 6 homes, there's 6 points or 6, so that in the future, if something dropped off, it would be at 5 and no new would be added.
Yeah, but I think what her question was if that red area was not a short-term rental, but it was a house with 5 bedrooms, it would not count as a short-term rental, so
Wouldn't
that
count as
if,
anything, if it was.
it wouldn't count as anything. So if a home, if that was not a short-term rental, if the home right above
Right
yeah.
over there.
Yeah, well, I don't think that shows to them. Right north of the one on the ocean. That is a short-term rental. Any one of the homes that isn't a short-term rental,
Right.
8 or 10.
it would be
occupancy.
allowed.
Yeah, my question was that and this is just for curiosity. I mean, if that big home, the 5-bedroom home, was not a short-term rental
Right.
and applied to be a short-term rental, would they be denied then?
Yes. Because they count as 2.
Yeah,
homes. Yeah,
but a smaller home would not be.
correct, correct. And
I think
there-
that's pretty clear, though, if the policy is consistent, that if you have a 5-bedroom home, it counts as 2, and that's across the board, then it would be easier, I mean, it's pretty clear, and I think it's easy to implement in terms of the licensing process for the city.
Yeah.
Phil has his hand up.
Oh,
Oh,
go ahead,
we
Bill.
can't see.
Bill, you gotta yell because we can't see you.
Okay, I'm sorry. Um, what happens if the new owner of the 5-bedroom home says to you, we're not gonna rent 5 bedrooms, we're only gonna rent 4?
I think that's what they were talking about earlier. They can't say that. If the home has 5 bedrooms, it counts as 2. Period. Because you can't,
Man,
the city can't manage that.
well, it's also a slippery slope there about, I mean, to me, that's hard to understand if I'm the neighbor.
Yeah.
So
And
your
in the
point, Bill, is they could say they were only gonna rent to 5 bedrooms, and that's only 10 people.
Yeah, well, yeah, but I mean,
Plus 4.
plus 4. You
So
can't
plus
just,
2.
I don't think,
Or 2.
Phil, I don't think that's a good policy personally to allow the owner to say, well, I got a 7-bedroom home, but I'm only renting 1. I mean, yeah, I mean, that's an extreme, but I just,
Well, yeah, but I think you're gonna get some pushback from some people who are going into this with the idea that they want to have a short-term rental
mhm,
when they're not using it, but they need 5 bedrooms when they're personally using it. So is there any forgiveness with regards to, I mean, you have real estate agents right now who are not renting the maximum amount that they could within a structure. They're arbitrarily cutting it back.
They're not arbitrary, it's all tied to bedrooms. They're doing the 2 people per bedroom and
That's
maybe
true.
2 extra or maybe no extra. So if that argument, if we said you go by the number of bedrooms and that is a 5-bedroom home. So they could rent it for 8, but it is still a 5-bedroom home.
I think what it gets to is back to the residents around it. A large home is more impactful than a little cottage.
And
Yeah.
I think to assume that if it's a 5-bedroom, the max number of people they can have is 14, I believe.
Currently.
Currently,
Current-
or 12, but
currently.
it's still more than, it's still, and I think that's the other point. It's not, is it 12, is it 14? It's that it's more than the other homes in the
Neighborhood.
contain
Catchment
area.
area.
It's more, it's more than the other homes in the catchment area, and therefore it should be counted as
2,
more.
yes.
Yeah.
More parking.
Does
more
that
people.
make more sense, Phil?
No.
Okay.
As, again, I think you're going to get pushback because people are going to buy these properties with the idea that they can convert it to a short-term rental, but they're only going to do it at the time that they're not going to be occupying it. So what's the difference that whether they make an agreement that, okay, we're not going to exceed 14, what difference does it make whether it's an individual homeowner or a residential company?
They can still have a short-term rental, but they can't if there's 4 other homes in the catchment area. That's all this is saying. They're not saying you can't have a 5-bedroom home and make it a short-term rental. We're just saying you can't have a 5-bedroom home and make it a short-term rental if there's already 4 other short-term rentals in the catchment area.
And I think this goes back to those conversations we've had where we all drew on our experiences that think of your own, when you have 12 to 14 people in your house, I mean, that's a lot going on just by the very nature of having 12 to 14 people under the same roof. So it is a large, and I know we're not using the term estate home, but it is a larger rental home.
Well, I think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think that we have talked also about it being just discouraging building these really large homes, which in some cases, when you're talking about 7 bedrooms, borderline having a hotel on your running a commercial business on a residential area. So sort
I
of,
feel what they could do is turn it into a legal duplex.
Okay, I think we're going down a road here that, first of all, the house is not for sale as far as we know. And second of all, it really is not going to impact that home right now. That the current owners, if they would have to reduce their occupancy by 2, they can rent their STR and nothing changes. And it's just like any other STR, whether it's 2 bedrooms or 4 bedrooms or whatever. If there's the catchment area has a maximum number, when it sells, it cannot be, it goes on a waiting list, if you will, to become a short-term rental. So it really doesn't matter if it's 5 bedrooms or 2 bedrooms, because the same thing would happen if they sold the house next door to it. Right? So it's not targeting a specific home. It's that in this area, we have limited the density of short-term rentals.
And I think if you make that very clear to anybody who's purchasing property in Manzanita.
Right.
You know, these are the rules. If
Well,
you're looking at
and it doesn't
short-term
matter
rental-
which of those homes sells.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
whether
oh,
it's-
I thought that the red home would be counting as 2 though.
Right.
Right, but so that area is still saturated. So if any one of those homes sold, it would be, they would have to reapply or get on a wait list or wait until to come out of that in that
Yes.
area. That area is kind of maxed out right there. So I don't think we're targeting big homes here in terms of, I mean, I think we're identifying them as a 2 large home, but in terms of managing the real estate in that area, it's a saturated area, if you will.
Well,
Let's
and
look at another one.
Let's look at
Yeah.
another one.
well, and I would say too, I don't think, is that the one? Or what is this? It's just a different one. But I don't think we're straying too far from what the name of Tillamook County was. I mean, I believe, so they called them estate homes. And I believe the justification was for safety and health issues, because there was septic systems that were being,
Right.
over time.
yeah, and I don't know exactly how they navigated that thing, because presumably, the septic system was sized for the amount of bedrooms that were there. But I mean, we use the word bedrooms, but the language is sleeping areas. And so we know that there's some homes out there that are kind of converting these spaces to sleeping areas, even though they're not necessarily bedrooms. But from a health and safety standpoint, I think there's a policy justification in there, given that these homes would be rented out in theory, through the summer season. So that'd be impactful traffic, parking, noise. So this is, let's see, Beach Drive. I'm trying to
I think
Can I ask another question?
go for it, Bill.
Thank you. Going back at this one more time. Cheryl, I think, brought up the fact that the fire marshal has some rather strict regulations with regards to a house that is 3,500 square feet or more. Is that correct?
I don't know.
It's either 35 or 3,100.
Yeah.
roughly.
Well, okay, so
Sprinkler system, yeah.
Suppression.
so doesn't I guess what I'm driving at is the fire marshal regulations going to a certain extent influence the amount of people that can inhabit these estate homes, and that they meet the fire marshal's requirement with regards to sprinklers? Isn't that something that Cheryl brought up?
Is.
Yeah,
But wouldn't they, I mean, if you have a home that requires a sprinkler system to get a certificate of occupancy,
Well,
I mean, you either have it or you don't get the certificate, right?
Manzanita currently doesn't have its own building codes around it, but the recommendation is that homes, any home, not just a larger than 3,600 square feet are required to have sprinklers. And I would think that, I don't know if Tillamook County has that code, but Manzanita doesn't do that right now. But that's something, a conversation for another day.
Yeah, okay, well,
Seems
there,
like
there is that we could fall back on.
Mhm.
it's interesting. I would, but it sounds like it would take changing the code to require the sprinkler
But
systems to
what
be consistent
difference
with.
would that make to livability in terms of proximity, Phil?
Well, I would doubt that a lot of these estate homes meet that current regulation, and it's got to be some major dollars to install a sprinkler system inside an existing house.
Right, and I think that's a good point, Phil, because if one of our justifications for this policy is health and safety, underlining safety there, and if we were looking for to give people a tool, I mean, to address that safety issue, and address that policy need, then maybe a fire suppression system consistent with, I don't know if it's state or ICBO or what, what.
I think I don't know, but
So guys, I think we're getting way off track on this. The sprinkler system would need to be required by the city. And there's nothing you can do. It's not going to affect the number of people in the houses currently. Now, the thought that we do need that is a whole different issue. And I'm not saying it's not a really good issue to pursue, but it doesn't have anything to do with what we're talking about right now.
Right, yeah.
Yep, thanks.
okay. All right, Michael, do you have any more slides?
No, I mean, these are the slides. I just don't know how much more examples we need. I mean, we kind of talked through this. It's just another example where this one's a little bit different in that this one is actually not licensed.
That's not licensed, but the one on top is a big home, right?
It is. That the one next
Yeah.
to it is 14.
So in
Okay.
this case, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 now.
Right.
No, 4 now.
4.
But
No,
one of the
there's three.
3.
one, 2, 3, 4. No, it's the green. You're
Catching.
counting the
Oh,
greens.
you're counting the greens.
So you're
Okay.
counting the greens and you got 4.
Got it.
So in this catchment area, there are currently 4. So if that lot wanted to become a short-term rental would be able to, but
Now,
if we count a large home as 2,
It would not.
it would not be. So here's an example of it would make a difference whether it was counted as 2 or it
Mhm.
was counted as
Yeah,
1.
yeah.
So that's all this is showing.
So do you think that not today, obviously, but we should go through this, find our, for lack of a better word, estate homes, the larger 5+ bedroom homes, and kind of mock them up and number them so we know when we go back before the council, we can say what the impact of this change would directly be.
Yeah.
Whether it's, oh, this catchment area would be maxed out and be on a waiting list until some change happened, or B, there would be change that would happen here, but currently it's not impacting anyone. It would just, this area would go to a proximity that has reached its maximum capacity. Do you think I think it's worth doing that for 5 or plus bedroom homes.
So I'm just trying to think of a data set that we have that has, so we have that for STRs, but we
Right.
don't have them for just general.
I don't think
homes.
we
Wait,
need
but
it.
it doesn't matter.
We
It
don't-
just, we want it for, I think what we want it for is, we want to highlight, just like I did here, all the houses that are STRs now that are
Mhm.
14 or
Okay.
more.
That would be impacted by the change.
Yeah. And how would that affect their catchment area?
But the policy wouldn't impact the large homes now. It would impact them if they changed hands, right? Or if somebody wanted.
Well, in this case, in the picture that's up on the screen now, the effect of this catchment area would be if someone wanted to put in a short-term, another short-term rental.
Yeah.
under the initial policy, they would be able to, under the new policy, counting it as two, that one with 16 or 14, whichever, I can't read. what it
Not the
says.
red one, the one above
The
it.
one.
They would not. So
Okay.
here is a catchment area that would be affected by the change. I think that's all we need to show.
That's
That's
all I
okay.
think we need to see what the
Okay.
change is. Either it would
Yeah.
be, the change, the impact would be, it is maxed out at capacity or over. So
Yeah.
you have over or maxed out,
Or. it
or
doesn't
no
make a difference.
impact at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
But we just need to highlight all the 14s and aboves.
Okay,
So I'd be willing to work with someone on that,
okay.
getting that data.
All right. Well, so that was kind of, I'm trying to think, there was
Yeah,
there was three
That was
things.
something you were going to. Mhm.
There was there was three things, right? I heard you say, Cheryl. This was one of the big ones, I think, from like a technical standpoint.
Mhm.
One, I think it was good to revisit some of these, the large home policy. Two, I think it was helpful to look at using occupants versus number of short-term rentals in the catchment area. So I think that addresses those. The other two points that were kind of hanging out there.
Well,
Oh, stop sharing. Yep.
One, I think, oh, again, this goes back to how good is my memory. I think you addressed the one, because one of them was looking at proximity in terms of number of occupants per versus number of homes, and you have done that.
Mhm.
The other was the impact that a maximum occupancy would have on 5 bedrooms or more.
Okay.
But I don't remember the third.
Well,
Third one,
Occupancy?
no, that's the max.
yeah, I vaguely remember us talking about a little bit deeper dive into some of the communities that were had implemented this already.
Yes,
And again, it wasn't just to
Oh,
you've heard me
yes. I know
kind
what
of
you're
speak out against just saying, look what they did. But I'm always interested to say, why did they do what they did? Right. So if there was a justification from health, safety, revenue considerations, like that's the review that we need to do, I think, right now, or to help council
That's
make
absolutely
a
right.
decision.
So,
Safety, write that down because I'm gonna do that.
okay, we, in our June report, we cited five communities that had made changes similar to this. And we were going to try to contact those areas, those cities, and with some questions. And I think we never came up with the questions, but we should. So there's like maybe X number of common questions we asked each of those communities. And I know one had to do with revenue, and occupant, rental, like, not occupancy as in numbers, but are the homes renting less because there is this or more or what?
Yeah,
And why did you do it?
yeah, I think it's the why. Well, what were the impacts considered? And maybe what are their outcomes post? A lot of this is probably so new to where they don't have that ability.
No, you know, when I did that survey and found the 5, it wasn't that they had made a change, it was that they had that policy in effect. So they might have had that policy in effect for
get-go.
20 years.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a change per se. For some, it might have been, but I don't know that. I just know that what I looked at was occupancy limits. Do they
Yeah.
have them, don't they?
Got it.
And I found 5 that had them.
Well,
Do we know why Manzanita determined,
the
you
original.
know, yeah, what we're doing now? How did they do that?
When we had the work group 4+ years ago, that was one of the line items in 10.3, the ordinance.
Uh-huh.
And we looked at it and we said, okay, well, currently it says 2 per bedroom plus 4.
Mhm.
Should we change it to +2? And a couple people said, nah, let's leave it at +4. So we did. Why it was +4 in the first
Yeah,
place?
that's what I was curious about. How did they?
I
compare
don't know.
that?
Linda, do you have any recollection? The only other person that might know, but I don't think so, would be my mother, but I don't think she knows either. So I don't think anybody at this point remembers. It was 1995.
That's a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there's anybody alive today that remembers.
Well,
Says something.
So I think if we were to reach out to the communities that you noted, and I know Bend was one of them, and there's a handful of them out there.
There's Bend, Palm Springs, Seaside, a
Cannon
couple
Beach.
others, Cannon Beach.
And so we
Okay.
know what their policy is. The questions that I think would be helpful is the why,
The impact
potential impacts.
and impact being on financially, the number of homes rented this past summer, community feedback. I mean,
If they have that data, I mean, the thing with the financial, the revenue, one, so anecdotally, we heard from STR owner managers and, turn off all my notifications. STR owners, and then I think it was Danielle and maybe Sunset that we reached out to that said that there wasn't a discernible
right.
difference, because when they put that price on, I mean, speaking for myself, when you put that price out there, somebody books it, you never know.
Yes.
It's not like, oh, here's a person with two, that's, and then
Well,
we
no.
adjust it in real time. So, I mean, even just this last month, big families have stopped coming to my rental, and it's been couples. And the price for September has been the price for 6
Well,
months.
school started.
Well, and so
Well, this was the discussion we had. You don't pay less. If you rent a home that can sleep 10 and you only have 6, you
Yeah.
pay the nightly rate
Same.
regardless.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And so I guess I would wade cautiously into the discussion around revenue when we reach out. I mean, if they have the data, great. But short of like bringing on an economist and having them charge us 10 grand to write up a memo.
This presentation that I saw just this morning, unfortunately, because it was kind of interesting. It showed the booking period. In other words, if you were going to rent a large home, you booked it an average of 60 days out. If you were going to rent a small home, you booked it an average of 30 days out. According to this in Tillamook County. It's really interesting. And what the guy was saying was, and what happens is with the dynamic pricing that most of the agencies and some individuals use, when nobody's rented it and it's 40 days out, nobody's rented it, you drop the price.
Yep.
And so the larger homes tend to rent at full price more than the smaller homes.
Oh, interesting. Wow.
Very interesting. I mean, it was a really interesting study, and it's worth everybody taking a look at, and I'll send out.
You'll send that to the
I'll
committee?
send out to the committee, and I'll send
Remember
it
that Danielle talked about,
to.
yeah. But Danielle talked about that pricing. She's got a model that actually
Yeah,
does
it was
work.
interesting. And so what the guy was saying was, he was talking to short-term rental owners. And what he said was, you may want to consider coming up with a price that you know is fair and just sticking to that price. That was his takeaway from that 60 days to 30 days.
Interesting.
He also said that bookings for the year are down about 4% from last year, but they are over in all cases. He took 2-bedroom homes, 3 to 4-bedroom homes, and 5 or 6-bedroom homes. In all cases, they are over 2019. So
Really?
they're down from COVID, but up from 2019, revenue and bookings.
That doesn't surprise me. I think more and more people come to the beach year round than they used to, but,
Yeah.
Okay,
Is there anything else? I guess my question is there anything else that we need to be thinking of when we reach out to these communities? And that's a question.
Yeah, a list of questions that we might.
Okay,
want
maybe we
to
can.
work on.
Well,
Does
but
the
like
survey
you-
expert have anything else we should be asking them?
Julie?
Julie?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, I just would caution about correlation and causation. I mean, especially coming off the last 5 years. I'm not sure if we even had the numbers that said, revenue is up, revenue is down, rentals are up or down. You could say that it had anything to do with any kind of policy change versus just the fact that life has changed, pretty dramatically. So,
I think before our October meeting, these are the 3 issues we need to work on. Just let me know if this sounds fine. That these are the 3 primary issues we need to work on. and fine tune the data and get it in a way that it would be easy for us to communicate to the council.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I don't want to put anybody on the spot right now, but I think this work can be parceled out into small groups to do. So if you had something you wanted to work on, you could let me know now, or you could let me know later. But I
Well-
think before our October meeting,
I'll volunteer to reach out to those 5 communities since I was supposed to do it last month.
Okay.
I do like Michael's suggestion to get to the whys. I think that's really interesting, is what led them to make policy changes or start to enforce policy in the case.
Riley, would you work with me and help me come up with some good questions?
Sure.
okay.
So those, I think these three things are in response to what council kind of
questions, yeah.
put out there as like, it'd be great to have it short up. Is there anything, Linda or Phil, you know, anything else we should be thinking of as far as shoring up our reports or addendum or revising the draft reports that we've presented?
I don't think so. I do like your focus on facts and data, because I think the council would like that. I just want to make sure we don't veer too off or too far away from our current report, because I think what we're doing is just reinforcing that our suggestions were really good and that we really don't need to change them. But we did look at the issues surfaced by council, and this is why we came to the decision to stick with our current policy. I think that would really help. I think you're doing a really good job of that.
You mean stick with the current policy recommendations that we gave them?
Yeah, I mean, it's your call, but I think it was a good policy report. I think it was data driven. I think overall the council really respected it. Data is really important to the council, so making sure that you have your arguments substantially relying on data. The calling to the other cities, I think, is really important. But I haven't heard anything in our discussions today that made me think we ought to reconsider what we recommended to the council before. Again, that's your call, but I don't know about Phil, but I haven't heard anything. Phil, have you heard anything that would change it? Okay.
So Linda, what happens now with council? Do we have any kind of?
Yes. So this water issue has really kind of taken a large amount of the council time. I know for sure that Layla wants to look at water in the next work session, but I think she's hoping to keep it, and not to make it a long discussion. We had a really long discussion in the last work session. So this one, she just kind of wants to revisit and make sure we're on the same page, which gives additional time. I just don't know what that additional time, I don't know what she's thinking in terms of when the short-term rental comes back. So the answer is, let me track that down. Cody, do you know anything about when she plans to get back to the short-term rentals, or what she's planning for in this next October work session?
I don't know. No, she's last she told me this was just kind of being shelved, but she didn't tell me when it would be unshelved.
Okay, fine. So I'll follow up and get back to the full committee and let you know when that's going to happen.
I'd like to put forward a proposal that I'd like other people's opinion on, but I would like to ask that it not be discussed in October, that we have until November to put together the answers to the questions that people had, both in terms of proximity, occupancy, and talking to the other cities.
That's your call, Joe.
In October.
Yeah, that would make it would be some time to get it in the work session, and November or December would be much easier.
Well, that would be great. The reason I had suggested October is I we've had some kind of quick turnaround sometimes from council and when they want to talk about it, and I wanted to be completely prepared should it come up in November with the council.
Yeah.
But if we know it's not going to come up until December,
Well, no, what I'm concerned about is it coming up in October.
oh,
And I'm just like, oh.
I think I can pretty much assure you it won't come up in October.
oh, okay, all right.
And
Thank
so
you.
what I'd like from you is when you would like to bring it back, and then Cody and I can work with Layla to see if that works on her time frame.
November.
Yeah, we should
Yeah.
have this all shored up by November.
Yeah.
Definitely,
I think
yeah.
it'd be nice, you know, my comment, my comments would be, it's always nice in my experience when we bring something to council, you have the work session, and then, so there's some momentum, right?
Right,
So
exactly,
once we
exactly.
present this at a work
Right.
session, the next council agenda is maybe maybe there's a motion.
Yeah, I think I think water really just blew everything up. So in that context, Michael, I think it's going to be really important when we go back to council, because it's been a while and lots has happened since we were there, is to just kind of do what we did with Cody. Start at the beginning, quick kind of summary of where we are and how we got there, a review of what our policy options were and what questions came up, so that you kind of lead the direction, but you kind of revisit the history. I think that would be really important.
So our next meeting, the committee meeting would be October 18th, is that right? Is the third Friday?
You can have it because we are off that regulated time frame.
Oh,
So
okay.
we no longer are meeting every third Friday. Whenever you want to meet, we'll make it happen. It can be the third Friday, but it's really up to you.
We do a doodle poll. I don't have my,
Okay,
Yeah.
Michael, will you send that out?
yeah, I can do that.
Okay, so Michael's gonna send out, and maybe October and November, or just October, take it 1 month at a time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we could do October. Fridays, I'll just say right now, the Fridays is what works, just because of.
Okay.
There is a fourth Friday, the 25th, which would be another good option, I think.
Okay.
All right,
And I
Michael-
would suggest booking 2.
Okay.
And then if you need to cancel, that's easy to do.
Okay.
Booking is a little more difficult.
Okay. So you'll send that out
And
for
the-
October, November, and maybe just pick a couple of dates
Okay.
that might work.
And when
The
you,
work session would be, is it the week after the city council meeting?
Yeah, it is. Let me look at November.
work session would be November.
When's the council meeting?
Council
It's the
meeting-
November 13th.
Yeah.
What is council meeting?
Is the
Echo,
no,
echo.
is the work,
The workshop is the 13th,
yes,
When is the council meeting?
the 6th
6th
6th of November.
October.
November. We're talking about November.
Also, okay. How did that work?
yeah, if water's still
Yeah,
kind of, it makes sense. It's kind of tough once you get past into the holidays too, and I don't.
Well, and that's another question. If the referendum will either pass or not pass on November 5th,
Correct.
then the workshop would also be taken up by water if the referendum fails, correct?
I believe that we are looking at a vote on so the issue is, if we go to quarterly,
Right.
God forbid, we will be able to respond to that in the November council
Six.
meeting.
Okay,
So I don't see it going to a workshop in November.
okay.
all right.
December.
So,
I'll get a doodle pull out for some Fridays in October, November,
okay,
and then
and you and I are gonna work on those occupancy and
Yeah, I'm
We'll
small, to Linda's point, small edits, just clarifying, giving
mhm.
folks what they need to weigh in or make a decision down the road.
But at our October meeting, we should be able to kind of present a
Yeah.
complete
Yep.
snapshot of what we discussed here
Mhm.
today of those three big topics, right? Good?
In report form, right, Joe?
Yes.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Okay.
And then we could add to that at that point. That's perfect.
Sure. And then Michael's gonna send out the poll,
Yeah.
and if you haven't volunteered for something and want to have input, let me know and we'll direct you in the right way. And I think
And Joe's going to call and have the information from the 5 cities.
Joe and
Right.
Julie are gonna work on questions so they're consistent. So if we're, if
Okay.
we- I know it's probably anecdotal data, but at least we ask the same questions and Julie will.
Yep. Yep.
And then the other two things are putting together a summary for council of proximity, people versus houses and large homes.
Mhm.
Counties too.
Yeah, county is
Yeah.
too, yeah.
Okay.
And most of that content's in the report anyway. I mean, it's not like a big lift to do that. In fact, I'll probably spend more time just trying to edit the report to make sure it's a consistent voice.
Yeah, I think that's why I think we should do this, together, so it's consistent.
Yeah.
Okay.
The only other thing, I know we're on track to maybe wrap early, was, Anupam's not on the call, but if, I know it was a priority, and me too, for him was these kind of, livability issues that are hanging out there, and I don't want us to get like sidetracked, but I think if, we all kind of have our own things that we're working on, if there's bandwidth to start, laying the groundwork for where we go from here.
Okay. Well, I thought about that and I was thinking that when we just have these open discussions, we tend to digress into like a lot of areas
Mhm.
that are outside our
Scope.
speak, yes, outside the scope of our work. So I was wondering if it would be, if people would consider taking this time, if you individually, when we even if we go back to the survey to refresh our opinions and thoughts, what are those issues?
Mhm.
Right? So we come with maybe.
What do we want to work on next year?
Yeah, what is it? And we keep saying livability, but what is it about the livability? Understanding that parking regulations, for example, are kind of outside the scope of our work. Generally.
Yeah.
And there's other factors.
Yeah. But Cheryl, you could also recommend that any study done by the city regarding parking, because I'm envisioning that we will be doing something,
Absolutely.
that please
That's
include short-term rental. Yeah, that would be very helpful.
Excellent idea. I mean, that should be one of the things we work on, making a recommendation to the city that when they do take up the parking issue, we're involved in it. And that can
Yeah.
be how we address some of those issues. But is it reasonable to ask people to start thinking about those? So, and we'll put time on the October meeting to
Yeah.
at
Yes,
first
I think so.
look at those?
Yeah, and
Okay.
I think maybe using the survey as just a starting point,
Okay.
to start creating these buckets, if we will, like, if it is, maybe parking is, there's not a whole lot of depth to that topic that we can do, and maybe the policy statement is, as parking data is available, we use it to, so whether it's parking, traffic, noise, just trying to.
Let's not define them here.
Yeah, you're
Remember?
right.
Okay.
So they're in the livability survey. They were prioritized in that. And if we have a Google Doc to where people can just access it, and then maybe within each of those buckets, some of us are like, it's easier to think of the solution, like, or the action item, and if that's easier to do, just get that out there, and we have a little spot park action item in there, and we can really think about what issue it's trying to address and what policy it's trying to, or if it's not at all, or is a solution to a problem that doesn't exist type of thing, or maybe it's a better fit to address it a different way. But let's just get our ideas out there so we can start doing like our work build, like post the growth management.
Okay, so I think that's a good idea, Michael, but I think it's really important that the total focus in October is getting this report finalized so that you're absolutely comfortable. And then I have kind of an idea, and I hope Cody is okay with this. I think we as a committee get really competent in the issues that we're talking about. This is really new for the city. I mean, it's not totally new, but it's a new issue for the city. I suggest you send that report to Cody and get his reaction to it. And then that would maybe help us tweak it so that it is really understandable. Because I think the big issue here is taking all the work you've done, communicate it in a way that council understands it and can make the best decision from it. So if your goal in October is to finish that report, to get it to Cody, I think that would be great. And then maybe your November could be, what are the things that we're thinking about and suggesting that we work on as we move forward? Because I think both of those presented are good ideas, but the report is bottom line, the most important thing to have your ducks in a row.
I would also suggest, Cody, we can send you the written report, but I think it would help. I'll find which council sessions they were to listen to.
Yeah. So I have sent him all the reports that you presented to council,
Okay.
along with where to find the survey results.
Okay.
But I think your idea, Joe, is right on. Send him the link to where the discussions, because that will inform. That's a brilliant idea.
Yeah, because that I mean, we explain the report.
Right, and then you get the council,
Right.
and we can use Cody to say, well, these questions were asked, but you didn't answer them in your report.
Right.
So that's Cody's job. So that would be great.
And that's perfect to have that additional level of review. I would just say, please hold on the red line strike through kind of edits until
Yeah.
Cheryl and I have our revised draft of that. And then I would welcome additional review on it, certainly.
Well,
So Cody's not going to review it until you present the final report. I mean, he's not going to review the interim.
Yeah.
He's just going to review what you come up with as a document you're going to present, that we're looking at presenting to council.
an addendum,
That's-
not a rewrite of the
No.
report.
An addendum, right? Sorry, you're right, an addendum.
So we have the addendum written, and that's going to get just tweaked a little bit based on what we have here. I was offering to go through the report and have like consistent voice in it. I'm not changing any of the.
I wouldn't
content,
change,
really?
I wouldn't change the report.
Okay.
The report was given, it was done. I think it would be confusing to rewrite it because you'd have to reread the whole thing. I think if we want to put an addendum that said, to clarify this point in paragraph 97.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yeah.
But maybe, Cody, if you would
Yeah.
commit to taking some time and looking at some of that, we could connect, so you could give us some real concrete guidance on this addendum, making sure we're answering the questions that were asked, and that if there were, I think it's kind of exciting to have with fresh eyes, because if you're looking at this and saying, yikes, then that will help us frame the addendum. And I'm happy to reach out to you and get you my contact information so we can do that and get you
Yes,
what
yeah.
our documents. That's great.
Okay, I'll send you guys Cody's email address. And then actually
Well, if you give me your last name and I have it.
a coin.
The email is CAUCOIN.
Good.
Like in less?
Like
Yep.
less a coin, but no relation.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
And just another kind of quick reminder, in that addendum that you send to Cody, that's great. But please do a quick and dirty history of how we got here, because the council is just, there's been too much between when you presented it and when you will represent it. We really need to bring everybody back up to date. Quick executive summary of what your suggestions were, questions, and then the addendum.
Okay,
Gotcha.
gotcha. Okay. I think we're good.
What was the date that The,
Michael's sending a,
okay,
Beautiful.
that's all.
Hi, Joy.
all right, are we good?
I think so.
I think this is great.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye,
Well,
Joy.
Thanks. Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
Michael, for your hard work.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for your report. Thanks,
Well-
Cody.
Bye.
See you, everyone.
Okay.